Okay, I think we are live. Yep, everything looks like it's live. So welcome everybody to Future Picture Reads. I am Luke, and this is the inaugural episode of the Interstellar Exchange and authors behind the pages. I am very, very pleased to have with me L.N. Bayen, and she has her debut novel, which came out yesterday, which was the 26th, and it's The Wingspan of Treason, and this is the lovely book. It is a chunker. I read this. She kindly sent me an advanced reader copy, and it was amazing. So go and buy it and go and read it. But thank you very much, Lamia, for joining me on the channel today. How are you?
Thank you for asking me. I feel very, very honored to be the first one. I'm good. I'm very good. Very happy to be invited.
Excellent, excellent. So it's been like 36 hours since your release of your debut novel, Lamia. How are you feeling? Was there any last minute panics? How did it all go? How did it all feel yesterday?
Oh yeah, I said something about this yesterday or day before yesterday. So I used catastrophically regret this now, but I used Adobe InDesign to make my book files, and they had like a big update 2 days before the launch. So yeah, and when I updated everything, all my files were sort of not read, and I had to just remake half of them, and then I had to remake the book, and then I had to submit files like by midnight. Like, it was just crazy. And then the way these print on demand services work is you have a deadline by which you have to submit things by, and after that, any changes you have to kind of wait for the deadline to pass. And yeah. So it was fun. It was fun. We're still ironing those things out. It's not over, but it was yeah.
That's good. That's good then. It's always horrible when something like that happens, like on the day before it's all about to go live. That must be heart in mouth moment.
Oh yeah, I was beyond caring by that point. I was that tired. I was like, okay, there might be a book.
Yeah. So I've heard you pitch your book a few times now, and I think you're starting to perfect it. So for the viewers today, why don't you pitch your new debut novel?
So The Wingspan of Treason is an epic fantasy. It is an adult book. It's essentially about a young man who is raised as an heir to a royal house in a northern kingdom, finding out a plot to assassinate him by his own parents. He runs away with 2 of his friends to a hostile neighboring territory, and the rest of the book is basically their journey of self-discovery, the revelations that they make about their past, the way that shapes their destinies and their loyalties, essentially, in a nutshell.
That's pretty good. You said you were terrible at pitching them, but that's pretty good.
I left loads of stuff out, but you know.
Yeah. But that's in it in a nutshell, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, it is a chunker, ladies and gentlemen. It's what, 658 pages, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 650-ish pages. But it's printed very close to the lines, all close together, so it's quite it's a big read, but it's a book to immerse yourself in, definitely.
I hope so. That was the plan. Not everyone likes that kind of book, but I like, sometimes I like that kind of book sometimes.
Well, I like to switch, you see. I like a big immersive book that I can kind of just nestle in for a good 3 or 4 weeks, and then afterwards I'll get a nice actiony, quick, fast-paced book just to kind of cleanse the palate.
Exactly. I'm like that too.
Yeah, excellent. So Lamia, what is your writer's origin story? How did Lamia the surgeon become Lamia the writer? Let's hear your writer's origin story.
So I think I was always a storyteller, I suppose. For me, this was a project of both writing and drawing. I actually started drawing before I started writing as a child, so because it comes with illustrations and maps and things. But I mean, I've mentioned this in a recent interview, but I mean, growing up, I grew up in the Middle East, and there wasn't much television, not because it wasn't there, but that was just a family choice that my parents made. My immediate family was sort of very kind of close and active. There were always stories though. So I have these very distinct stories around a stove, on the veranda, into sort of late summer nights. They were incredible. And I think that just stays with you all your life, because it's from that period where just memories are just immortal. And then I had to teach myself English when I moved to the UK, and I did that through reading mostly, because it was very isolating as a move. And again, so you just became a bookworm, and it was inevitable, I suppose. This particular book it's the second book I've written, the second story per se, finished big story. The first one was like a fanfic I wrote many, many years ago, which will never see the light of day. It was very different to this one. But this book kind of probably began with, I know it sounds very silly, I had a very beloved cat who was, as all our cats are, just a right rascal and just a right character, basically, who basically became the godfather of Ravi, the mini beast, the Ocelot. And he just deserved a story of his own. But it began as a middle grade, like, children's book, which now that you've read it, you probably think, really, what? Because everyone I tell kind of thinks that. And so it began with the idea of this mini beast. A couple of scenes that I had in my mind, which I thought were just perfect for a story, and the time period that we were in. So the Syrian civil war had started a few years before. There was a lot going on in the aftermath of that. There were many, things to deal with, and I think sometimes the best way to deal with all those emotions and things and events is just to put it into a book in some ways. So that's probably the origin of this particular book.
Lovely. That's interesting that you were going to write it as a middle grade story. I mean, if it was focused on the mini beast, that kind of makes sense. And I'm glad they are still in the story, but in a kind of different, in a different way, aren't they?
Yeah, very much. It was a first-person sort of children's story. I still love children's stories because I have very, very fond memories of them, and I will still read them. But a month later, it changed. I knew this was an adult book. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I have to thank authors like Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton when I was a child, and those are the authors that really stick with me and stay with me. That taught me how to love the written word. Especially Roald Dahl. He was very precious to me in my young days.
Definitely Roald Dahl. C.S. Lewis, Michael Rosen. Yeah, Michael Rosen. I just love their stories, their books.
Yeah, it's funny. I got to C.S. Lewis a lot later than I did with Roald Dahl. I think C.S. Lewis I got into maybe when I was 10 or 11 years old.
So it's the other way around for me. I think I found C.S. Lewis and then found Roald Dahl, just learning English.
And then after C.S. Lewis, I found Tolkien, and then that was it.
That was it.
Fell in love with fantasy.
Yeah, there's no turning back.
So, I mean, speaking of authors, what authors have kind of had a lasting effect on you as a reader? And then what kind of authors or books have inspired you to then create your own world and write your own stories?
So I guess, again, for me, it goes back to those childhood memories and of storytelling. I mean, in terms of authors, it's hard to kind of really... I mean, I read so much, and I mean, everyone who says they're bookworm will relate to this. You just almost lose track of everybody you read, except the ones that really stand out. So my great aunts, my uncles, all those people who kind of told me stories. I mean, they're not authors per se, but it was very much an oral tradition. So I remember them and their stories very clearly. Things that kind of shaped the way I tell stories now, I suppose, and the way I write. Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials. I will never forget the way I felt the first time I read the Northern Lights. I mean, that was just, and that again, it's a children's book. It's a young adults. It's not even young adults children's book, but it's just the way he spends the first chunk of the story just telling. There's very little, modern rules kind of applied, and I just love that because it was very reminiscent of the stories that I was told when I was a kid. We talked about C.S. Lewis again, and similar vibes they created. The other people who probably had more of an impact, actually not fantasy writers, because for a long time, so once I started higher education, as you know, I'm sure, it just gets harder to read. I read a lot of nonfiction, not just for studies, but a lot of nonfiction, just myself. Joan Harris, I've mentioned again before, is anytime she had a book, I would get it, no matter what was happening. Her prose is beautiful, and it was the kind of prose that was kind of missing, I think, from a lot of fantasy books. Not because fantasy writers can't write like that, but I think they almost have steered away from writing like that. In terms of fantasy writers, Robin Hobbs, and I loved what I've read of her, and Tolkien. You can't get away from her. Just Tolkien is inevitable. I haven't read many of the more modern popular writers, I'll be honest. Again, it was just not because I didn't want to, because of life and getting in the way. And then Dostoevsky. I always go back to the Brothers Karamazov. It's like a book I reread whenever I can. It just, in terms of authors and books, that's my favorite kind of English translation of. It's not even an English book, but it's a book that really has an impact on me as a writer, and in terms of the books that the way it shaped my book.
His Dark Materials, I think, is a really fascinating trilogy, because, as you say, it's children's books, but there are incredibly dark and adult themes that he puts in there, which I find like, there was always a saying that you don't go around editing Tolkien. You never did. And I think that's the same with Philip Pullman. He, it's like you said, he kind of broke the rules of storytelling a little bit, in the fact that he did all that telling in the beginning, and then in the second and third book, he just literally does what he wants with the story. He goes into some very courageous directions. And that, for me, I mean, even it's a children's books, I think particularly the third book, it's heartbreaking. It's devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hate the ending.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just it's absolutely heartbreaking. But but I think children need to read stories like that. I think it's important for their reading journey, but also just to teach them about the world, and about emotions and feelings, and how to deal with them as well.
Yeah, but you know what he does? He casts a spell, and it appeals to not just children, it appeals to adults. There's a reason why adults will go and buy these books. And I will, again, it's a series that I read. I'm a big rereader. It's a series that I reread every so often, and I think that's what I want to do with my books when I write. You just want to bewitch your reader sometimes, and that's the kind of writing I guess that I enjoy the most. And he just does it so well.
Yeah, 100%. So let's have a look. We've got some people in here today. We've got Dark Stars Book Kevin. Good evening, Luke. Hello. We have Abel Montero. Hello. Good evening. Mel Langton. Hey, how are you doing? And the lovely Esme is here. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Esme. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. So I saw on your book launch tweet, your post, that this book has kind of been 8 years in the making. Can you take us through kind of your writing process, kind of what that involved, and also, I mean, due to being a busy person like everyone else, where did you find time to write?
So I write. First of all, I don't sleep. I don't sleep much. And I sometimes at work, I will have periods of time where I could sleep, but I choose not to. So that helped. But I think being able to write anywhere, like I have a lot of friends who can only write in their room, or can only write, with music, or can only write in a setting. I can stand in a lift and edit on my phone if I have to. And that's just purely because of necessity. And we talked about the inception of the book itself. I wrote the story and rewrote it basically gently over time. And I'm much more of a plotter than a pantser overall. But I wasn't like that at the beginning. So there's a lot more sort of, writing as you go with some vague targets. But I just knew it was going to take a long time with that method. So I just wrote when I can. And I can still, I'm very thankful. The other thing is having a great, light, small, weightless, essentially, device that you can just take anywhere to write. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's amazing that you can edit on the go. Oh,
it's just necessary, honestly. That otherwise you're never going to fit it in.
That's crackers. I mean, how long was the actual writing process, and then like afterwards, what was the edit? How long was the editing process?
So the writing probably took about 5 of those years, and there were gaps. I mean, when COVID hit, it was hugely disruptive to my career. Everybody sort of was working from home. It was the opposite for me. So I work in hospital. I was you had to suddenly learn how to do a lot of things that you hadn't done for a long time, with a lot of responsibility and a lot of tragedy. So it was that was disruptive. I had some major exams on the way, so there were periods where I stopped, but essentially I was writing the rest of the time. Maybe about 5 years for the actual story. And then I edited it at least 7 or 8 times. I edited the book myself. I'm quite hesitant to tell people that, because I think people think if you haven't hired an editor, it must be flawed in some way. And I'm sure an editor could have, spotted things and made them better. But I think because it took so long, I was able to write, step away, come back with fresh eyes, look at it on a different device. I mean, I changed machines even during that period. It was so long. Look at it on a different device, see things that were missing, and then, just keep perfecting it and keep kind of polishing it up. And I think that's a luxury that I had that I will not have ever again. Because if I spend 7 or 8 years writing the next book, I think everyone will hate me if they want another book, and I will hate myself. But you learn a lot. People say you should write X number of words before you can, or that you end up needing to write a certain amount of words before you kind of come into your own or find your style. I think I did that with that one book, if that makes sense. I kind of found what I wanted to achieve through that one joke, just by rewriting it and editing it and cutting it down.
Yeah.
Yes, this is cut down. This is a cut down word count.
I mean, I dread to ask, how many words was it before?
About 290,000. About 290,000.
My Lord.
Yeah.
That would have been.
I learned to cut those out.
Yeah. Blimey. I mean, so. We got some. Mel Langton said here, his Dark Materials is the only trilogy I've ever read twice.
It's good.
Yeah, it is good. Yeah. And I'm not a massive rereader myself, and I think those books that really do have a profound impact on you are definitely rereadable.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Mike Slammer. Hi, USA representation checking in. Thank you for this chat. Very interesting. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate.
Hi, Mike.
You staying here. Yeah, I mean, the second book then, I mean, of course, that's you can't take 8 years doing that one. I mean, I'll be on your case all the time if that happens. But I mean, I take it the process for book 2 will be quite different from the Wingspan.
Extremely. For one, you find a style that you want to write it in, because I actually don't always write in this fashion. I mean, I've got other stuff that I'm working on, and it's not all like this. Not all my writing is, believe it or not, like this. I write stuff that's either too long or too short. So my current work in progress, which is not this general fiction, is too short, but that's a different story. But once you kind of decide, once you have a vision of the style, I think it helps. Once you know your own failings or flaws or weak areas, I think it also helps, because you can watch out for them as you go, and everyone learns to edit themselves better. They will never be perfect the first time or the second time or the third time around, but you just learn. The other thing I again realize is for me at least, I have to have a bird's eye view of a story. So I have a bird's eye view of the entire series, because I think that's for me the best way to avoid major plot holes, and to ensure that your pace is roughly where you want it to be, is to have a bird's eye view. Because going back and fixing that stuff, it just makes you want to kill yourself. It's just awful. Like, going back and fixing all those problems in a 250,000 word document is just hell. That includes timelines and things like that. But then, so I have the scaffold, and then I will start to organically build stuff as I go. And now that I've got the foundation of the world that I want to write it in, it's much easier. There's like probably about 50,000-60,000 words of notes kind of saved here and there that will help guide me write the rest. So I'm hoping book 2 won't take quite so long.
Hopefully not. I'm sure it won't. I mean, was there any amount of research involved in the Wingspan? Because, I mean, are there any analogs of our world that you use to have, like, to base your cultures on, or to inspire some of the cultures that you get in your book? Because for me, there is a Middle Eastern, kind of Eastern European feel to the setting.
Definitely. So I mean, I love lots of different settings, and when I was once upon a time pitching this book to traditional publishing, I used to, in the pitch contest, pitch it as Rumi times Beowulf times Gilgamesh. So that was that's probably I think a fair representation of where we're at. So
Yeah.
I've always loved the Germanic history and kind of Norse history, but more the language in this case rather than the actual themes. So I've kind of leaned on the language of these cultures and these places rather than their actual histories, because I'm a language nerd. The South is based more definitely Middle Eastern tones, but also different. But it's not so much the Middle East desert setting aside as the concepts of colonialism, as the concept of sectarianism, and the civil infighting, which, you know, going through in my own sort of personal life at the time, with back home, it was very relevant, and it was a nice way to air those frustrations, you know, in a different, you know, they're not exact analogs, but they explore the themes, and I, like you, I'm quite big on themes. They explore the things that were kind of bothering me. So there was no set of specific research topics that I did for this book, although there are going forward for the rest. It was more stuff that had shaped my thinking and shaped my understanding of the world, and my awareness of the cultures that I've been exposed to, you know, the accumulation of those kind of starting to appear, the things that you love or the things that trouble you appearing in your writing. There are definitely a small number of, I think, influences that I think come through. So my favorite European philosopher is a Frenchman called René Guénon, and there's a lot of you know, so that had definitely had a lot of impact on some of the stuff that I wrote. My own sort of kind of background, obviously, and travels. I think I haven't traveled far or much, but the places that I've been to have had a big impact. So
yeah, themes is something that I always look for in kind of any SFF book I read, and yours is, you know, you've got themes packed in there, you know, like you said, colonialism, sectarianism, stuff that you consciously put in there. One that kind of really emerged for me was the matter of identity and discovering yourself, which I think all three of the main characters in the book go through. Is that something that you were conscious of doing as well when you were writing it?
That's the one theme that I actually didn't focus too much, and it just came out interestingly. But then you recognize it's happened later unless you develop it. For Klaus, yes. For the other guys, a little bit, but it wasn't the one that I led with. I had, I mean, I come from two cultural background settings. I had a very much, I had to deal with a lot of cultural. I hate the word culture clash, because I don't know that it's culture clashes. I think it's people clashes. It was very, I guess it just bled out onto the page because I'd been through it. You know, the concept of identity and the concepts of place and your attachment to those things and how they evolve, and the evolution of identity and the differences between people, or if there are in fact many differences between people at all. I think those are the things that kind of you know, shape those, and I think that's probably why you have the result you have now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I found there's a lot of kind of nature nurture kind of themes going on, particularly with Verdi, because he was born in a different place that he grew up with, and then it's, you know, it's about rediscovering where you were originally from, and there's a lot of that going through. So, but it was interesting that you said there about the theme of, you know, we're not all that different at all between us. You know, our cultural or racial differences, at the end of the day, we are human beings. And I think the word I kind of thought about when you said not cultural clash is kind of cultural integration. It's kind of like two cultures trying to work with each other, and that again in Wingspan kind of came up in my head when I was reading it.
I think it's we as species tend to focus on differences rather than similarities, and we become blinded by them. And part of the reason is ignorance. Another part of the reason is ego. Ego gets in the way. People have, to various degrees, sense of self-superiority. I think in this regard, not just kind of having two cultural backgrounds myself, etc., but so I'm a doctor. So I think when you're exposed to people when they are very sick, or when they really need to focus on the most important things in life, it really strips away some of those issues. In some people, it coaxes out the worst of them, but I think in most people, it really makes them think about the things that matter in life. So when you have someone in a room and you're telling them that you're going to die in 6 months, or someone has died, or it really just boils down to very few things. And there's nowhere better in my life have I seen the similarities across all people than in that setting. And that's something that I've wanted to focus on, because it's maybe cliched, but actually cliches are the most important things in life when it comes down to it. When you're at a death's door, that's
yeah. I mean, I think that's another reason why I think the book hit me, because I was reading at a time where my mum's been in hospital for a while. I mean, like me, because we've had chats back and forth, and I mean, even being in hospital as a visitor and seeing my mum there, who is kind of back to health now, everyone, so don't worry. But at the time, it was very, very scary, because we didn't know what was wrong. The doctors were exploring and investigating, trying to find the source of the problem. But just being in there, it really does. It strips you away of all the kind of barriers and ego that you have outside that place in society, and it strips back, and you see what's important in front of you, I think.
And that's what Verdi's character is all about, especially.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. 100%. So let's talk. I want to talk a bit about your beautiful illustrations and the maps that you created, because you did them all but by yourself.
Thank you.
The book cover itself, is that your design as well?
Yeah, I drew that. I chose a medium of pencil and paper, and then I again hated myself for about 6 months because it was very slow medium. But yeah, don't use pencil to do a front cover and get it looking smooth.
And with your arcs, you actually kindly sent some maps. I don't know when the camera's going to pick this up or not, but your maps are beautifully intricate. The border especially is absolutely beautiful. And one of the main characters in the book, Klaus, is himself. He has a fascination and an affinity with map making. Is that something that's important or special to you specifically, map making? Because I get a feeling it is.
You're going to laugh, but when I started writing this book, I had no idea that I was going to be drawing any maps. All I knew was that he wanted to. You just don't think about. I told you the beginning, there's a lot of organic growth. It's just absolutely freaking stupid. I would not dream of writing a book now about a map maker without first having drawn the map. I can't write a book 2 before I drew like an map because I had to go back and fix a lot of plot. But I always, for people who haven't read the book, Klaus has always wanted to travel, but he's been born into a royal household, and he has been trained as an intelligencer, which is basically an elite spy scholar. So they're very clever, they're very crafty, they do lots of immoral stuff to get the job done. They're not just spies, they're scholarly. They're also trained, in sort of some military skills, etc. So in warfare. But he's wanted to travel the world everywhere. The role that he's forced into does take him all over the world, but within the confines of his assignments, which are normally assignments that are sort of very morally questionable for him. But when he moves to the south and when he flees, he gets to finally become a map maker. And then the story is about his journey of kind of discovering his skills, etc. So no, I didn't know that I was but then once I discovered it, I was addicted. So the first map I'd ever drawn is one of the maps that you held up. I'd never really drawn a map before. I love astronomy. I love sort of compasses. I love looking at maps, but I'd never drawn. That was the third of the 3. I think the first one was the 7 parts. So, and I wanted them to be a little bit different. I wanted them to relate to the story. So all the borders relate to themes from the story. So plants and beasts and animals and nature are all represented in the border. And I like to make things complicated for myself. So these are all A2 maps, which is, for people who don't use UK nomenclature, is huge. It's like, I don't know, 22, 23 inches in one angle, and the aspect in the other is, I don't know, maybe 26. So they're really, really big, which allows you space to draw. And if you have space to draw, you add more stuff. Like it's just so that was but now I would not dream of writing the next books, as I said, without the map. It's really just
absolutely. Dark Stars book, Kevin, that's a giant of a map too.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean that the 7 parts map is literally on this world map is like the tiny little bit there. Are we going to discover some peoples from these other places?
You get glimpses from them through the flashbacks that Klaus had, in his tormented nightmares, because I thought that'd be nice. The reason I did that actually was just to give you an idea of what he's escaped from, what his life was like. There will be some movement elsewhere, there will be some travel elsewhere, but I don't want to lose sight. I don't want to be someone who doesn't. I need the plot to stay focused. So there's a balance between exploring elsewhere and but there will be definitely more involvement. There is some sort of international, if you like, plotting. It's just whether you get to go to those places as often as you do. The Sylvan part is a different matter.
Definitely, yeah. Mike Slammer, well, I love that. Ego, especially as a real killer, good and bad ego, is well said. That was from just a small while ago. So what kind of stage is book 2 at the minute, Lamia?
Book 2, so now that I've learned my lesson, I'm plotting. That's how I ended up with a massive word count, by the way, by not plotting well. I'd like book 2 to be smaller than book 1. If the story necessitates it to be similar in length, then so be it. But I'd like it to be shorter. And it's definitely a faster paced book. So at the moment, I know the plot. I'm now kind of adding in more bones to the skeleton. I do a little bit more research now than I have previously done for some of my books, just because I've laid the foundation and I want to start fleshing out more of those themes. And I have started writing it, but I will make sure that there's a solid plot, and then I'll kind of organically grow it, hopefully over a period of a few months. The writing it is not the part that I'm worried about. I think I could do that in a period of months if there weren't too many life distractions. It's the editing. It's the making sure it's right, stepping away for long enough and coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I at the minute I'm writing my first story, which is going to be a novella. It was going to be a novelette, but it is starting to expand into a novella now, I think. But I've got into a nasty habit of writing a chapter and then going back and editing that chapter and tinkering with it rather than carrying on writing. And I'm trying to use the willpower to not touch that and just keep writing the story as it's kind of unfurling in my head, because I keep going back and go, oh no, let's change that and everything. So,
but do you feel like there's a pressure to? I mean, if that's what works for you, and if it helps you spot problems going forward, actually, sometimes that's not a bad idea. I mean, sometimes I'll go and edit a chapter and then realize, oh, hang on a second, this has to change before I, build on it and make a big mess. I mean, Nick Alexander was talking about this over the weekend. He just writes the whole thing, thrashes it out, and then and sometimes I'll do that and leave gaps with lots of red X's, and that I'll go back and fill because I know they need to be filled in, but with something better than what I can come up with right now. But sometimes it's important to go back and edit, and you're like, actually, this needs to be tweaked before I build on it. It takes me a different direction. But otherwise, you're right though. If you do too much of that, you never go. You don't progress.
No. He's intense, man, with his writing.
He is.
Just flashes it out, man. That's insane. That was really insane to hear.
Well, no, I wish you all the focus with this, because I know how frustrating it can be, and I'm excited to see where your journey takes you, with a much wiser decision to write a novella rather than an epic tome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a novella, and then as I'm writing the novella, I get ideas of how to kind of maybe expand the universe with an actual novel. But starting with a novella, I think it's good because it's a very personal piece. It's literally a two character piece essentially. And a lot of the times one character, and it's basically a science fiction novella. It's got a lot of kind of exciting, tense action scenes, but it's a meditation on grief as well at the same time.
I think they make the best stories, the personal ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, put the ideas for the novel in a folder, and I think that helps you focus, and you'll come back to them. It sounds really exciting, actually, Luke.
Yes.
Personal journeys are the best. Yeah.
I haven't written for ages. I'm not like Alexander at all, where he just does it. I have a burst of writing, and then I'll leave it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll come back and I'll do another burst. That's the way I work. But I think I'm still discovering what works best for me. So I'm just trying different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you currently reading at the minute, Lamia?
Oh God. So this is so normally I read one book at a time, because I like to immerse myself in a book and finish it and really enjoy it. And sometimes I'll even read it again before I read another one. But at the moment, because I'm very greedy, there's just there happened to be a lot going on right now. Book production does take you away from reading. Writing takes you away, but not as much as book production. I spent the last year illustrating and then fighting with Adobe, various programs of Adobe, and then just trying to get stuff out and then making art packages, etc. So I got greedy and I started reading like 5 or 6 books at the same time, most of which are by the Secret Scribes, which is my group of fantastic fancy authors, are also sort of basically fancy indie publishing self-help, talking off ledge kind guys. So The Tale of Spricket the Bard by Sean O'Boyle. I don't know if I think I've mentioned that to you. I think you'd really enjoy that one.
You have. Yeah.
Vile. The Tale of Tanner the Tender Sword, Envoys of War. I'm reading as well, The Odalic Stone by Alex Sherman. So I've kind of like picked up all their books because A, they're very interesting, and B, it was just nice to be able to talk about them with this group. I'm also about to hopefully soon start Ed Crocker's Lightfall. So that's my current pile. And I have many more that I will hopefully be able to read now that I am going to retire forever from writing and just read for like a solid month or two. But you know what I mean? You just take some time out and read,
Yeah,
I'm a relatively fast reader, so you're not as fast as you, but I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I'm not that fast. Like compared to other booktubers, I read about 4 books a month, and that's
a huge amount for me.
It's a huge amount, but there are. I mean, Esme, I don't know how she does it. She is the super reader of the universe. She gets through so many books in a month.
Hats off, honestly.
She has superhuman abilities of reading.
I haven't been able to read like that since I was a teenager, just because of time and life, and then writing. But I found that reading some books at the same time out of greed, it's actually worked quite well, because if you come home and you want something lighthearted, you can just pick it up. If you want something that's a little bit more classical or traditional, you can pick that up. So I don't think I'd continue doing this forever, but for the now it's working quite nicely.
Yeah. Dark Stars book, Kevin. Sorry if I've missed this being asked. Sorry if I missed this being asked already. But how long did it take to write?
So the writing was about 7 years, so 5 years roughly to write, a couple more while editing, and then the 8th year was illustrating. So 8 years in total. But I'd say roughly 5, with gaps for the COVID pandemic and bereavement and things like that. But yeah, that was the process.
Yeah, I imagine
I don't recommend this.
Quite a couple of your years, really.
Well, it's just like one day the government was like, "Well, we're closing everything down after not doing anything for a long time," and then they're like, "Well, and you've suddenly got to learn how to run an ITU again." So, that was fun, because then you just go home freaking out every day, and then it was just it wasn't fun at all.
Yeah, your mind won't be on your book at that point.
No. Sometimes an escape, but most of the time you just had this existential crisis about something that you've done wrong that day, or that you're going to do wrong tomorrow. So but it definitely was an escape during times in COVID, actually, because there was a lot of stuff that you just look back now and think, what on earth did we do, and why did we do that, and etc. So it was therapeutic at times to write, but there was a lot of time where it was just not possible, just studying all the time.
Yeah. Reading for me was a huge comfort and thing that I needed during COVID. I mean, because just with the manner of what my job was at the time, I wasn't at work a lot of the time, and that for me was worse, because I don't like being not busy. I like I like working. I like being busy. So a lot of free time that that I didn't know what to do with. So it's I think it was hard for people in very different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But let's not get all down and dusted about that.
No, exactly.
Yeah, the Secret Scribes. There's a few of their books that I really want to read, and it's on my 2025 TBR. Envoys of War is piqued my interest definitely.
Loads of fun. So much fun. Like one of your light-hearted reads that we can actually just really enjoy as well. So I highly recommend.
Yeah, definitely.
They're all very different. They're all very different. So that's the nice thing about them.
Yeah, and Fogbound's been on my radar for quite a while, so I've got no more excuses anymore. I need to read that one as well.
Nick Ashley isn't a scribe. He wishes he was a scribe, but I'm sure he'd be.
Oh, did he gate crash? No. Did he gate crash?
Well, I've invited that night wasn't. I think it was scribes plus a few other people.
Right. Yeah.
That wasn't so much a gate crash, but I think Dave invited him. But yeah, Fogbound is Nick's book, isn't it? I'm not misremembering that. My brain is semi-pulp at the moment. It's Nick Alexander's book, right? Fogbound?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes,
it does look good.
That one. Yeah, it really does. And Ed Crocker was involved in your book, wasn't he? In some way.
Ed was my proofreader.
Proofreader, yeah.
Yeah, he's my brilliant proofreader. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to gather because I've got a small beta team together, and I've got a small alpha team together for when I eventually finish my novella. But after that, I am a bit clueless. So I think I'll be asking all my author friends, "What do I do next?"
He's my proofreader. He also edits, but he's my proofreader. And his book is. I mean, I've only just started reading. I've known of his work for a long time, so it's not new to me. But it's another one worth picking up when it comes out in January.
Yeah. Excellent. So, my last kind of base question is, and this is something that I brought over from a podcast I did many years ago, and it's just a fun question to kind of end the official interview with, which is, which 6 authors, public figures, or celebrities, living or past, would you have at a dinner party? You've only got 6 chairs.
Oh my
Choose
God!
wisely.
Oh no! Oh God! Oh. I don't watch TV or know much about celebrities, so
they can be anybody. They can be authors. They can be people that you may have met in your life. Yeah.
Oh, people I've met in my life is probably. I mean, I have lots of fantastic colleagues. Henry Marsh comes to mind. He's a brilliant neurosurgeon who's now retired, but also does a lot of charity work. He's just fantastic to talk to. He's very philosophical.
Wow.
That's one. I love Joan Harris as an author. I've already mentioned her. I mean, Dostoevsky. How can you not ask Dostoevsky to dinner? I mean, come on. We'll just bring his existential crisis with him to your dinner party. He'd be a good one. René Guénon, I mentioned already. Philosophy. Just tell us. See, I predicted your modern crisis already many years ago. He'd be a good egg. How many have I mentioned now? 4. I'm sure I've got
4.
3.
Yeah,
that's 4. Beatrix Potter.
Oh.
I just love her. I just love her life story. And I mean, she had a lot of tragedy, but she was such a, seemed like a beautiful kind of creative soul and in tune with nature. I mean, if I could meet an author from back then, Beatrix Potter, Tolkien.
Yes.
It's just that this is a good question. So there's people who've come probably brought forward to my mind because they're talking about books, but yeah, that's a good start.
Man, that would be a very deep conversational table that you've chosen there, wouldn't it?
They're quite philosophical people. Yeah. That's a dinner would never end.
Yeah, exactly. And you got Tolkien for your love of languages, because he would just go on and on about it, wouldn't he?
And philosophy and morality and all the other things. Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, Doc Star's book coming. I'll happy volunteer for your ARC team when you're putting one together. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
You put it out there. You'll have lots of interest.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me in my inaugural episode of Authors Beyond the Pages, Lammy. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you for asking. I feel so honoured. This is honestly, it's also lovely to talk to someone who is like I said to you before we started, who's the right reader for your book. And I'm glad it came at the right time for you, which is very nice.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So everyone who's watching, Wingspan of Treason is out now. If you like epic fantasy, if you like complex socio-political kind of structures, if you like, deeply rich, layered characters, and a kind of different setting from your traditional Western fantasy, then the Wingspan of Treason is definitely for you. Go and support indie authors, support Lamia, go and buy the book and read it. I loved it. It is my book of the year quite easily, the easiest 5 stars I gave this year. So yeah, it's fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic. Before we go, where can people follow you, Lamia, on social media if they'd like to keep up to date with your book updates?
So I'm most active. I'm not on much social media. I'm most active on Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it. I have recently joined Blue Sky. I know. Just but we know once you start there, it's hard to kind of suddenly in the middle of a launch, everyone was like, "Oh, we're leaving," and I was like, "Oh, I have to start again." I've recently joined Blue Sky. I'm not currently on any other social media because I find it really difficult to juggle the time. I do have a website, but when I'm active on Twitter the most, and I will probably hopefully mirror those activities on Blue Sky as well.
Cool, excellent. And you got a website as well, haven't you?
I do. It's lnbayen .com. I almost sent it to an email address. So lnbayen.com. I do try to keep that fairly active.
Yeah, excellent. Mike Slammer, as an aspiring author myself, this was really enlightening. Love big maps in books. Wheel of Time, was that on purpose? Haha. Is already on the TBR list. Thank you, Lamia and Luke. Thank you, Mike, for sticking around listening. Thank you. Oh, we've got a late shower. We have
Hi,
Alex Schuerman. You can watch the replay, Alex thing. I mean, we can just stick around and chat if you want to. I don't mind.
I'm free if you have questions. I'm actually off work today, which is great. I thought it would be wise to have the day before and after release at home
100%.
or off work. And I'm very glad I did, because I spent the whole Monday fixing files. So
yeah, exactly. If anyone's got any questions in the chat, please feel free to put them in. So you're back to it tomorrow. Have you got any more interviews lined up for your book launch?
I might be doing one more, but we haven't sort of set a date. I don't really reach out much to, I do a little bit, but I'm not really sort of I must put myself out everywhere kind of writer. I just like the business of writing, and then you have to kind of talk about it a little bit, and I just like to get on with it, and the writing and the drawing and stuff like that. So if anyone's interested, then I feel free to approach me, but I don't do many of them. So but yeah.
No, and I get that, and there's lots and lots of different authors that do that. They write their book, they put the simple marketing out there, and the best thing is with Twitter and with Blue Sky and just within the indie book community is the word of mouth is just so fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, you've had some lovely messages on Twitter. Indie Man said the Wingspan of Treason by Lamia is out in the world, and the world needs to take notice 100%. I'm 75% through, and let me tell you very honestly, it's a beautiful debut by all means. This needs to be on your TBR without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, thanks, Indie Man. He's very kind.
Mel Reynard, she said, happy book birthday to Ellen Bayen. If you love immersive epic fantasy, beautiful prose, your prose is absolutely gorgeous, by the way, Lamia.
Thank you. Thanks, Luke.
Complex world building and the best kind of heroes, and this next book is for you. Bo Kelly, who is on SFF Insiders. Congrats on the book launch, Lamia. I know quite a few people who have either read this already or are currently finishing up the arc, and everyone had great things to say about it. If this isn't on your TBR currently, it should be based on what I'm hearing. And then Thea Leons, this is without a doubt one of the most amazing books of the year. I agree, Thea.
Thanks, Thea. It's been lovely to hear that. I think so. I released the trailer for this book last July, and then a lot of personal stuff happened, and I couldn't kind of see it through. The plan was to have it out last November, ironically, so literally a year ago. And then the slowest of slow burn marketing, a term which Tom Bookbeard has come up with, which I think is perfect. So it wasn't deliberate. And then I realized it was only a year and a half ago, that I realized that I wanted to illustrate it to the extent that I did. So I spent a year illustrating. So after, like I said, you should go in with a plan. I mean, it just helps make things easy for yourself. I don't make things. I just like to make things complicated for myself. But that gave me time to meet a lot of people. That gave me time to kind of build relationships. I'm not someone who just wants to, socialize so that you can promote my, I just don't, I'm not that kind of person.
Mm.
I'd rather like people who genuinely want to read it, you know, you're more than welcome to. If it's not your, but it's not going to be the right book for many people. It's going to be very wordy for some people. It's going to be too poetic for many people. It's a liability for many people's toes. I mean, it's just not for everyone. No book is for everyone. But that year and a half gave me a lot of time to make some great relationships with people, and I think that helps because, you know, people know your book and they know you've had glimpses into your writing. The drawing helped, the illustrations helped because it got people excited. So none of that was really planned. It was quite organic. So, you know, it was that was nice. So yesterday became quite special because of all those people, not because of the release, because I wasn't sure a book was actually really out there, because until Amazon, you know, was like, yeah, there's a book and people can buy it and it's actually being processed. I wasn't actually 100% sure. I don't have all the copies yet. I've had one proof a while back, which wasn't right. So, you know, I'm just like, is it really real? So, but that time definitely, you know, gave an opportunity to build those relationships, which led to those comments, because these people are my friends. They're not just random readers, which has been lovely.
Yeah. Wasn't you got a second print of the book and it was slightly lighter or darker than the arc that we've got?
Yeah. Well, I use like an independent printing press in the UK to do the arcs. One, because, and they're fantastic. They're called Clock Print. I can't praise them enough. I stupidly used really good thick paper, which is why Luke is over a kilo. I'm so sorry. Like I said, don't drop it on your toes.
Whatever you do, if you're in bed and you're reading like that, don't fall asleep.
Just don't. You'll need wrist splints the next day. I'll offer free medical advice to anybody who has got injuries from this book.
You
don't need trays for any toes except big toe. I'm just telling you now. But no, the Amazon version is on thinner, much more sensible paper, so standard industry kind of size. So it will be a bit thinner, as will the Ingram one. The colors are a bit different, but it looks nice in a different way. So they are different. If you do it, every printer will be a bit different.
That's kind of why I'm glad I got the art version, because I think this is a beautiful version. I like the weight of it. It feels substantial. And if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I have a weapon in the house. So
exactly, but a legal one, you know,
a legal one.
Exactly, yeah. Until you apply it to violence, then it doesn't become legal anymore. But for now, no license required.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these are the illustrations that you did at a later date. Then are they the light?
So I had this idea, like, to, you know, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a nice idea, and then I began to have more ideas, and then and then the problem is if you illustrate, you then have to scan, so you have to get a good scanner, and then when you scan, it's not quite the same as what you illustrated. The ink tone's not the same on the screen, and you have to fiddle, and I just rescan and refiddled and so many times. Again, you iron out the process for book 2. So now, for instance, as I'm writing book 2, I've already started thinking about what illustrations will go with it, because I would like to ideally continue this throughout the series. But I did not do this the first time round. I learned the hard way.
It's interesting that it kind of became a byproduct of your writing. You know, all these little illustrations on the chapter and the map making became kind of a necessity for the story.
It's inevitable. I mean, I told you, I started drawing before I started writing, so it was always inevitable. I just didn't really think about it. I didn't realize. I always thought sort of the art is sort of something you just did, you know. I mean, I even find ways to do it for work. You kind of forget the joy of doing these things, that when you have an immersive job or when you're busy, you just forget the joy of your own creative side and what you can do with it. And it was nice to realize in time, oh, I can make use of this. So that was good, especially since it's quite expensive to get you know, artwork done, and so I feel really, really blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of indie authors, they talk a lot about, you know, the front cover of their book, and there's some great artists out there that a lot of indie authors use quite frequently, and it's great that there is access to that as well, you know, for the indie author community.
It does need a budget though, so I have I think quite a modest budget compared to most authors, and I have not sort of exceeded it. But the only reason I was able to afford to print some arcs and send out the arc packages was because I didn't pay for editing and I did my own artwork. I paid for proofreading, but that and then printed it, and then that was it. They were my main overheads. And I also paid for a professional voice actor for my trailer, which wasn't enormous actually compared to a cover. So yeah.
That trailer was cool, by the way, though.
Thank you. That was another month and a half of fighting with Adobe. Adobe is just the enemy, honestly. I had to learn how to use Adobe Premiere Pro, and it's just the most user unfriendly. Anyway, they produced some good stuff eventually, but no, the behind the scenes were just not pretty. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think my partner Mel, she's an artist. She's a freelance artist herself.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think she can probably sympathise with you with Adobe
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatever art program that she's using at the time. There's always lots of swearing and
Yeah.
cursing from the office.
I'm sure. Does she do stuff electronically? Does she do computer assisted design and sort of?
Yeah,
Does she kind of, yeah,
she's mostly a digital
graphics?
artist, so she
Yes.
uses she uses a lot
Yes,
of
so
those programs.
I'm very old fashioned. So I, have stacks of different types of paper and paint and pastel and oil, and that's what I use. I just don't know how to do digital art, and that's a problem because it looks very different when you do your covers, and trying to get it to the standard, the industry standard, without it looking not quite, not hitting the mark was quite challenging. I've nothing but admiration for people who can do digital art that to make it look like an oil painting or whatever. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, Alex, art is expensive. It is, and I'd love to have
Yeah.
more of it for me. So it's awesome that you can do it yourself. Yeah,
It's very big blessing.
it is a blessing, definitely. And the fact that art can be expensive sometimes is because I mean the real tussle, the real struggle is finding an artist who will create a piece of artwork which isn't, there has been controversies in the past within the book community about AI art being used rather than the artists actually used, but it's that fine balance, isn't it, of
Absolutely.
making your artwork financially accessible, but also that you yourself are making a living.
Yeah, I'm a big I hate the whole. AI is theft. I'm very straightforward for me.
It is.
But I'm pretty concerned about witch hunting now. Kind of people trying to find evidence of AI on things, assuming that it might be in there, and that's just not how we should be behaving. So
No.
I just think don't use it. But if you are caught up in buying something or commissioning someone who has used it, I think it's difficult for that to be spotted. I think yes, you should have to take the steps to make sure that you don't, but it is challenging, and traditional publishers are increasingly using it, relying on or using stock images as well. So
yeah,
and I think independent authors are actually spending a lot more on their books and projects than traditional publishing houses sometimes, but I am concerned about both the rise of AI art and what it takes away from artists like your partner and just people who are doing it full time for a job. But also I am concerned about allegations of people falsely being accused of using it and then having their kind of career or reputation harmed. And there will be repercussions for all of this. You can't, the law side of things is yet to catch up, the legal aspect, but there will be repercussions for both.
Yeah, dark side AI is such a problem. Yeah, that new publishing house, it's called Spines, created by a bunch of tech bros. Yeah, it's really worrying. It is worrying that, and it's always a big discussion in our household because I'm a reader and Mel's an artist, so it's encroaching on both our worlds.
Absolutely.
And those worlds are interlinked as well. Art and writing. So it's always quite a hot topic in the household.
We have responsibilities though as consumers.
Yeah, exactly. Mike Slammer, I don't mind AI assistance for small uses like spell checking, helping the layouts, and basically AI should be used as a tool to make things easier for us. When it then starts encroaching on our creativity space, that's when it starts getting dangerous and worrying.
It does literally take away jobs. It does.
Yeah.
It literally, is built on the labor and the toil of other people without their permission. Where else do you get that? In what other industry? You can't even get someone famous or someone respected in their field to come and speak at an event without paying them. So it's just morally, it's very clear cut for me, but many people don't appreciate that or don't realize that because they're not involved in the process. They're not being harmed by it. They don't think about it. Some people don't even care. So
there you go. But it's and then on the bright side, we get lovely publishing houses like Broken Binding who really showcase artists, showcases indie publishers' books and stuff. So We hope to win the fight, but it's a big battle. But we'll continue our cause.
Absolutely. I mean, creativity when it's been offered as a product, or if you make something, it shouldn't be free. It shouldn't be cheap. Someone has poured a lot of time and labor and into it. It's not. Why should it be just easy to come by? I mean, it shouldn't be inaccessible either. But it should be commensurate to the amount of effort. The cost should be commensurate to the amount of effort and energy put into it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people. I mean, Mel comes across this quite often. Not with businesses as much, but when she's like doing commissions for individuals, that she'll put her price across, and they'll flat out refuse to pay it. But I think a lot of people just don't understand that this is their livelihood, this is their business. I think some people kind of treat it as a hobby more than a business. This is Mel's livelihood, and she has to, and she's fortunately had lots of help from illustration establishments, illustration groups that have helped her with legal work and stuff like that. So she's done so well in the past 2 years to kind of grow her business.
Yeah, it's 50 hours of work, for instance, into something, or 30 hours of work. Why do you think even if you're earning minimum wage, why on earth would you not expect to pay someone for that?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And the materials, all the time, or the energy, or whatever the overhead.
Yeah. Well, we're hitting the hour mark, so I think we'll say our goodbyes to everybody. Thank you, everyone who's watched this live. I really, really appreciate it. Your messages and words, and this is my first kind of live stream author interview on Future Fiction Reads, and I really, really enjoyed having Lamia with me. Thank you very much, Lamia. You've been the perfect first guest.
Oh, thank you, Luke. It's been a pleasure. When is your next one, by the way? So this is, really looking forward to seeing this.
My next one is the Creators Collective, which is basically talking to other booktubers, other book vloggers and bloggers, and that's on Monday, December the 2nd, and that's with a fictional escapist. His name is Chris. That'll be UK time. That's 10 in the morning because he's in Australia, so it's a big time difference.
Oh, I didn't realize. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I think I'll be off.
You're
very wise saved. So after Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yep. And I've got a few more booktubers and another author coming in December, so I'll be revealing that on my social medias and on my channel. So watch this space, everyone, because we've got some exciting stuff coming.
Amazing.
Excellent. Okay, dokes. We shall sign off now. Lamia, thank you very much. I really, really hope that your book does well, because it deserves to, and it's a fantastic read. And I think we've got some people who've got your book on their TBRs now, so hopefully that'll turn into sales.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye for now, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now. Cool.